Hello again, viewers, and greetings, fellow space travelers. This is Thorn of Night, and welcome to part 3 of my guide for Reika's RotaryCraft. And today I'm going to be going over one last set of stuff before I get into the nitty-gritty of the actual workings of the machines. I have been so far just using a demonstration setup with the creative mode, power generation, and this guy here, and a couple bevels from time to time, these guys here, but I'm going to get into that sort of stuff in much greater detail over the next couple episodes. But today I want to deal with one last thing that you're going to probably want to involve yourself in at least some of this stuff fairly early, because it does make working with the mod and just Minecraft in general a little bit easier. Today I'm going to be working with the stuff dealing with items and inventories and whatnot. The first thing I have here is called the Handheld crafting tool. And the recipe for that's pretty simple. Just get some HSLA steel, some gold, and a crafting table. And you can just craft that in a crafting table. You don't have to use the work table for this. And it is what it sounds like. It is a portable crafting table. You just carry it in your hand. It could be way up here in the sky. Right click, craft, done. So that's actually pretty early on. You could get that going and do a bunch of crafting on the fly, make your life a little bit simpler that way. Next up, we have something called the vacuum. Now the vacuum, well, let me show you the recipe here real quick. Uses some steel ingots, an impeller, and a diffuser. I went over those, and I believe all of those in the first episode. And the way this works is, first off, you'll see that it is powered with kilojoules. Right now, this one has 31,801 kilojoules in it. And the kilojoules, each kilojoule represents the one ability to click and perform its function. Did I really start recording almost at nighttime? Sorry. Now, what this item does is, if I come up here and start dropping some items on the ground, like so, and then stand back here, oops, get this guy out and start right clicking with it, first you'll see that the amount of kilojoules in it starts diminishing. Let me get up to the farthest edge of that block. I think I should be able to go one more. There, that'll help. No, that looks like it. And what it does is it just draws in items. Pretty straightforward. It has a range up to here, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, and then that ninth one it does not reach. So anything within an 8x8, or rather a 17x17 square with you in the center, will be drawn in, any loose items. So that's pretty helpful pretty early on, and it is a relatively inexpensive recipe to make. It just uses steel, nothing big there. So there's that. Next thing I'm going to demonstrate is this thing called the wind spring. Now the wind spring is used in a number of items, both for crafting as well as an item used as a sort of a battery component. And the recipe for this is just some steel ingots there. There is an upgraded version called the high strength spring, and it requires a basic wind spring, 2 diamonds, 4 HSLA steel, and 2 bedrock dust. So this is much later in the game. But this guy is the unbreakable version of this guy. Now the way this works is, if I take, well, let's see here. I take this guy, it has 0 kilojoules in it, and put it in a coil winder, I can get some energy stored in the spring. But really quickly, let me show you the recipe for the coil winder here. It has to be crafted in the work table. Just uses some steel ingots, 2x gear unit, the HSLA kind, the steel kind, a shaft unit, which is also steel, and the base plates, or base panels, which are also steel. So this is just steel, no big deal there. But if I put this spring in here and give it a little oomph, let me show you what the book has to say about it real quick. Oh, that's one thing I should mention. Many, I won't say all, but many of the machines and devices in this mod have a question mark over here for info. And it doesn't matter if you have the book on you or not. Whoops. You can still click on it and it will bring up that page of information. However, if you have the book, you will be able to access the additional tabs. But the coil winder is, oh, there's the recipe there. I didn't even have to bring it up. Basically, like I said, it's used to wind up the coil items. It has a maximum energy of the torque input. So basically, whatever you want to put in there torque-wise, that's the maximum energy achievable that you can put into a storage unit. Keep in mind that if you try to overwind a regular steel wind spring, not the diamond and bedrock one, above a certain point, I'd say starting at about 1200 kilojoules, you run a risk of this thing just obliterating and popping. It doesn't break the machine. As a matter of fact, none of the stuff that I'm going over today will actually have any sort of adverse effects from overcharging the machine. But this can break. But let me go ahead and get this going. Right now I have this set. Let's see here. I'll put it up to... I'll start with 1. And then give it 1 Newton meter of torque. And you can see right there it says 0 kilojoules. Let me turn this on. The torque is 1 Newton meter, so the maximum this can achieve is 1 kilojoule. And it says operation time, when you look at it, 0.05 seconds in order to do that. So let's up the ante a little bit. Let's go 2. Now if I look at this, it says, let me see here, 107 million seconds. Well, that's just not going to work. That'll take forever after the initial oomph on it, but it did put it up to 2. Let's up this a little bit and see what it says. 0.5. So let's take this up to something bigger. Let's say 16. It says it'll take 0.2 seconds in order to do each kilojoule, and it's up to 16 kilojoules now. Let's go 1,000. Why not? I won't take it all the way up there. Now looking at it, it says about a quarter of a second to go for each one. Let me up this some. And it's back down to 0.05. And all the while, it is going to be filling that up. And 0.05 basically means 1 unit of kilojoules per tick. Looks like it's slowing down. Now, the more energy that's being put into a spring, the longer it takes to put the next kilojoule in. So you have to keep upping this gradually in order to keep it going at 1 kilojoule per tick. But that's how you wind the springs. And let's see if I can get this thing to pop. 32. There we go. Just gonna sit around here and see if it'll pop at around somewhere between 1200 and 1500. That's been my experience on getting this wind spring to just fail. Oh, I forgot. I have you set at 1000. Let's up this. There we go. It's going kind of slow. Let's up this too. That works. And you can't make it go any faster than 0.05 seconds for each kilojoule. That's 1 kilojoule per tick. So that's the absolute maximum. Let's see if we can get this to pop here. Usually it's done it by now. The last 10 or so tries I did was between 1200 and 1500, but I have had a couple go. There we go. Almost 1730 it looked like, but it popped. So keep an eye on it. Don't overwind a spring and you'll be fine. Anyway, one of the ways that these springs are used is if you have an item, say this spring-powered pump that I demonstrated in the previous episode, which has 512 kilojoules in it, and you have a spring with 4 kilojoules in it, toss the item you want to get the new charge in on the left. Actually, it doesn't really matter left or right, because they swap their energies. Before, this one had 512, now it's got 4 kilojoules, and this one should have 512. And just to show you that that works in reverse, this is back to 512, and this is back to 4. So it doesn't take all of the contents of the spring and just cram everything into the new item. It just swaps the kilojoule values of the two items. So this will end up as 0 if this started at 0, but if this started at a higher number, this will reach that higher number, and vice versa. But that has to be done in the work table. You can't do it in a crafting table, unfortunately. Alright, the next thing is called the Scalable Chest. And the Scalable Chest, let's see here. Well, I can bring up the page here in just a moment. It generates space for you to store items based on how much power you supply it. Now, ooh, I'm having a little bit of lag here. Just a second. Hold on. That was weird. Alright. For each slot that you want to have in your chest, you calculate 128 times n. And n is the just the arbitrary variable name that I'm using here. And that's 128. The base is 32 because it has a minimum requirement to operate. And the maximum for this equation is 617. So if I turn this on, I can now access this, and you'll see I've got 9 slots here and a tab with the recipe for it. Recipe is 8 of the steel ingots around a chest, and one interesting thing about this is if it has lower power than its maximum, even if you have items in the higher slots, those items will still be there. You just won't be able to access them. So you can almost use this as a safe, and people won't be able to access it. And I'm having some lag issues. I might have to pause this and then reload. I have been running Monster for a while. I think the memory leak is attacking. But really quick, the power usage for it is it has a minimum requirement of 4096 watts, which is that 128 times 32 that I had up there, and it has this equation with a maximum size of 594. Well, translating that to something simpler, yeah, I'm going to have to take a cut here real quick. But translating that to something simpler, I just put it up there like that. And hold on, I'll be right back. Yep, that fixed it. I had an issue with my memory leak caused by Monster. I was spiking over 70-something% of my memory used. But anyway, where was I? Basically, the power usage of this thing, it doesn't really matter what's in the torque or the speed. It doesn't have a minimum for those. Let me fire this up and open it back up again. It just has a minimum power requirement. So these numbers, for instance, you could divide this by 2 and then multiply this by 2. As long as it comes to the same number, you can access everything in this first row. But the way I have my equation set up, it makes it a lot easier. You leave one of these numbers 128 and then the other is 32. 32 is the bare minimum. You'll get one row, 9 slots. And if I, say for instance, add 10, or yeah, I'll add 10, so 42. Give that a few moments to adjust. You get 10 more rows. And then if I go 616, you can see it's got a lot of wattage there. Let me get rid of this. Goes all the way. Oop. What are you doing there? You're not supposed to be there. It goes all the way to the second to last item, and then finally, if I change this to 617, all of them are filled up. You get 10 pages. Anything above 78,976 watts is wasted. You don't get any more spots than 10 full pages of this. So that's how that works. Now, for some reason, this jumped to another spot in the inventory. I had it there, but let me demonstrate this again really quick. Jump it down by 1. Even though the chest is there, it doesn't show up. But if I give it power back up to the 617, there it is. It's in its correct spot. So that's how that works. Go ahead and turn this off. Move on to the next machine. This one doesn't actually have a GUI, so you can't interact with it that way. It is called the Item Refresher, and it is found in the book on page 16. So let's go to page 16. There it is, the Item Refresher. It uses end stone, so you'll have to get some end stone, an ender pearl, and for steel like that. And basically it just keeps items from despawning. Now, items that have been around more than 5 minutes, as soon as this loses power or sufficient power for that item's location, it will despawn immediately. Now, the bare minimum required power in order to get this to work is 16,384 watts. Now, that number can be divided into 1024 by 16. That's where this number comes from. So the way I have my calculation set up, let me show you theirs real quick. Oh, it was here. You've got this interesting little equation here, and it works, but it doesn't make nearly as much sense as doing it this way. So if I have 1024 for one of these numbers, and again, this just deals with the wattage, doesn't matter the speed or the torque, but bare minimum 16. And what that will do is keep 4 blocks in every direction chunk loaded, or not chunk loaded, but it'll keep loose items on the ground from despawning. So if you want it to go out an additional 1, you just add 1 here. So 17, now it's a radius of 5. 20, now it's a radius of 16 plus 4, Or I'm sorry, the 4 plus 4, so that's a radius of 8, and it's more power equals more range. Now, I have not tested this to see if the maximum is actually correct, but let's see here. Click on this again. Actually, it doesn't have a maximum. But I would assume that it probably has a maximum range of 128. That's just my guess. I'm not 100% certain on that. But that is how this guy works. Let me go ahead and put this back to 16. And like I said, there's no actual inventory here to interact with. No GUI. And move on to the next machine. This one is called the fan. And the fan has a minimum power requirement of 1024 watts or 1.024 kilowatts. It also does not have a GUI or inventory. So let's turn to page 13 of the book. And we'll find the fan. Here's the recipe. It just takes 5 planks. A shaft unit, 2 base panels, and an impeller. And what it does is it blows a stream of air so that items and experience and some other things, like for instance fire or crops, will blow away from the fan. Now it has, like I said, that minimum requirement, and it has to receive power from the back, so that's why I have the power going in there, facing that way. But let's get back here to the fan. It does harvest plants, but it has to, in order to do that, it has to be a minimum radians per second, or minimum speed of 512. And it does extinguish fire at least 64 speed, but there is a chance that at lower speeds it can spread fire. I won't demonstrate the fire bit because it's pretty straightforward, but the way I have this set up is with this 1024 radians per second, and once again this just deals with power. As far as this equation goes, this part of the equation, excluding the plants and the fire, with a 1 here in the torque, it will put an item 8 plus 1 spaces away. With a 3 in the torque, it will put it 3 away, and then 7, it'll put it 7 away. Let me go ahead and demonstrate that here. I'll just go ahead and plop you down. And I have that set to 1, so that should take it down to here before it stops at the 1. And then if I go ahead and put this back, I'll give this a 10. Why not? Turn it back on. Higher speed means higher distance, and also a chance for it to go just a little bit farther, but not much. It might go up to 1 or 2 spots beyond. Now, I did find 2 interesting things about this. One, if I put this at 40, for instance, and kick this on, you would expect it to go to 40, and off it goes, vanishing into the distance. But, for some reason, here's 20. It stops usually just past or just at 25. And I can't get it to go any farther than 25 for some reason. One other thing to note, here I see how it says no go. If I turn this back off, that no go is on the 2. So if I put a 2 here and turn it back on, it doesn't move. And it doesn't matter how you arrive at 2048. If I go like this, 512, and change this to a 4, it's still the same amount, 2048. It doesn't move. But if I don't even have to turn that off. If I up this, say, to 8, it works again. So I don't know what's going on there, but for some reason at 2048 watts it does not move. Now there is one other thing I wanted to cover about this, and that is the plants. So let's I believe I put some seeds in the chest here and some bone meal. If you put some crops planted on the ground in front of the fan and they grow up, the fan will blow them down the line and replant the crop. And I have it set to 1 right now, and it works all the way down at the end. I will set this up to 40, say, or I'll set it up to 100 just to demonstrate that further. Plant some crops here. Bone meal, all the things. Oh, it went 1 past this time, but the items are stopping there. Actually, it's probably 26. I may have misspoken on that. Actually, no. Huh. Well, this is new. Items are getting flung a little bit farther. This did not happen when I was testing. I tried it for about an hour. But as you can see, this one is not getting blown away anymore. It stops right there. So it still will not uproot. I don't know why it uprooted that when I first planted it. I may have over-clicked or something. But those are the functions of the fan. It also blows experience. It does not blow mobs, unfortunately. It's supposed to, but let me go ahead and turn that back on. Get rid of this stuff. Put a cow here. Oh, now it's doing it. Very, very slowly. See, you're making a fool of me here. But even with that, if I come down here and start flying, I can walk this way, but as soon as I reach this point, oops, I get stopped right here at 25. So it won't go any farther than that. If it's moving at a high... Oh, that's why the wheat and the seeds went farther. Because if it's already moving at a very high velocity, it has a little bit of momentum. Okay. Bring this back, make it morning. The next thing I wanted to cover, there's just a few more things here. I will try to get through them quick as I can. Is called the item vacuum. Now this thing is awesome. There's an item in another mod called a vacuum hopper, and whenever there are loose items, it slurps them up and adds them to an inventory. And this guy does have an inventory, but this has something much more special going on with it. Here's the recipe. It does require some black wool specifically, some steel and impeller and a chest. It has a minimum power requirement, that same amount that I demonstrated before. And, whoops, if you give it more power, you'll get more range. So, for instance, if I have it set to this 1 here, it will slurp up items within a radius of the 8 that it has as its base. But outside that radius, well, actually I have some blocks here. I'll just go ahead and toss this down. Outside the radius, it will not slurp them up. You come back here, and the calculation again for that is 8 plus the power meters. So that would be 9 there, and that dropped at the 9. So if I come over here to this distance, nothing. Now it does have a maximum range that it will work at, and I tested this chunk loaded and everything. So it seems to, even though it should go farther technically, it seems to have a cutoff point. I have a pillar way over there, at 128 blocks. Now, that is an extraordinary amount of power in order to reach that, but any items within that radius will get slurped up, and I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate that here. Come down this way real quick. This is 100, 110, 120, 2, 4, 6, 8. If I put the item down like that, you can see it slowly creeping this way. That's it being drawn into the hopper. Or not the hopper, but the iron vacuum. But if I plop it down, let's see here. There we go. Just past the 128. It doesn't get slurped. There it does. There it does not. So that is how this guy works. Get back here and finish this off. Long flight. Now probably need to kill that cow so it doesn't pester me later. Alright, the next thing. This is called the Pneumatic Item Pump, and it has a GUI. And basically what this does is it moves items rapidly from one inventory to another one at the end of its line. It has a minimum power of 1024 and a minimum speed of 256, which means if you put in the speed 256 here, you can have a torque of 4, but you can have whatever combination you want as long as you meet those requirements here. It does have a blacklist, whitelist option, ignore or use metadata, ignore or use NBT, and use or match exact for the OR dictionary for items. So you can use a sort of filter here. But the way this works is if I have some items in here and I turn the power on, it starts very rapidly transferring the items from this inventory to this inventory. Let me go ahead and turn that back off. But it gets better. You can set a bunch of these in sequence. You only need to power the first one there. It doesn't require any additional power. And you can move things down the line. Not only can you move them down the line, you can move them around a corner or straight up. I have a chest up here. Let me go ahead and empty that out. Put these in here. And items are just ending up here. It's like there's no travel time. I don't think there is a travel time. It moves just that fast. Now, if you want it, if you want it to go faster, just give it more go juice. So let's see here, 64, and you saw how rapidly it just went through all that. Whole thing's gone. Leave this running. There we go. 64, and it is that fast. Moves stacks at a time, one stack per tick at that speed, I do believe. So that is the pneumatic item pump. And it is going to be very, very helpful with transporting your items. It's just about the fastest item moving thing there is, except, I don't need to put that in there. This guy here. 2 more things to go, though. First I'll do this one. This is called the sorting machine. It does have a GUI, and you can see on 3 of the sides green, red, and blue. And let me go ahead and place this down. Away from you when you place it, no matter how you place it, the spot away from you is the back, and that's where it has to receive the power from. But you can set this to sort specific items out the sides. Now, it doesn't spit into inventory, so if I put a chest down here, it won't matter. So let's see here. That's the green side. I'll put stone there. Let me kick this on real quick just to demonstrate. And I will just drop items on it. It doesn't spit them into the inventory, but it sorts them in that direction. So if I put them in the blue direction this time, it will go away from me to the blue direction. And you can have multiple items, multiple item types in each of those rows. Now the recipe for this requires not only a hopper, but also this thing called a circuit board. And I have not gone over the circuit board yet. So let me go ahead and bring up the recipe for that. You can make it one of two ways, and it doesn't require a work table to do. It's gold, redstone, HSLA steel, and if you want to make two of them at once, you can use an interpearl, one at a time, a copper ingot of some sort. And this can be helpful for sorting your items. However, you will have to deal with the items being loose. And faster speeds just make it sort a little bit faster, but not much. You can get stacks at a time, but overall, if you're going to be dumping loose items around, there's a better way of dealing with items one at a time. For instance, the final item I'm going to be covering here, this is called the item cannon, and the recipe for that is a chest, some base panels, steel ingot, 2 of these 2x gear units, and a compressor. And you'll get one of these guys. It does have a minimum power and a minimum torque, so if you divide that into that, it gets to be 256. And let me bring this back up again. The description here says it fires items across the map without harming them. And when it says near instant transport, it means near instant transport. And the destination does not even have to be chunk loaded. It is so wonderful an item. However, the destination has to be another item cannon. And you have to have the exact coordinates of that item cannon in place. So if I come over here like this, the coordinates are 1483, and let's see here, that's my head, so 4. And then that's supposed to be negative 1086. And let's go ahead and put some items in here. And just to show you that this is not a gimmick or a gag here, let me just run around real quick. And I will write down my Y1470.84413. That should be good. So done. And I will go ahead and put this in there, and some chests and some stone. And here's once again the output for this. Now if you give it more juice, let's see here. I haven't tried it with more juice, come to think of it. I only tested to make sure it doesn't blow up, but let's go ahead and just run these to here. You can see it firing out the top, and they are arriving over here in a very loud fashion. So let me bring these down just to show you. There's the coordinates again, so done with that. And one other thing to mention about this, I will go ahead and up this a little bit to see if it goes faster. Turn it off. I have some other coordinates down here on the sign. 1604, 66, and negative 934. I'll go ahead and toss these in like that and fire it up. Nope, that didn't make it go any faster. Hold on. There's still some items. Let's up this a bit. Nope, same rate. Alright, good to know. The destination that I set for this is way up here on this floating island. Just to show you one of the other tricks that you can use with this. It is noisy, so I recommend using some sort of muffling device. But I have one up here, and here are the items. Let's take a look at the book here. There we go. So, it's a nice little slime island, actually. That is what I wanted to cover in this episode. It's a little bit longish, but this is a lot of good stuff that you would like to hopefully use for transporting items and dealing with inventories and things like that. It just, all these can be very helpful in working with what you're working with. That didn't come out right. Anyway, this one is the only one I'll probably never really use. I don't need to keep items laying around, but pretty much everything else I think I have a use for. But that is going to be it for this episode. Next time I will be back with part 4, and I will start working on the power generation in that episode, and hopefully be able to cover all of that in one go. But in the meantime, thank you very much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please feel free to leave a message in the comments section below. I will do my best to get back to you as quick as I can. If you like this video, please feel free to give a like. I do appreciate that. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you know when my future stuff comes out. But I have a cow to kill and some other things to finish up before I go. So thank you once again for watching. This is Thorn of Night, and I will talk to you later.